Okay, good afternoon. I think it's time to start the meeting. My name is Piotr Weiss. I'm from CINEA, Unit D1 and Life Energy. And let me warmly welcome you on session 8 on district heating and cooling and heat pump topics. I am very happy to be here with you and with my colleagues, Madis, Matthew, Philip from DGNR, and Luca from CINEA. The meeting takes about 1 hour, and there are a number of items on the agenda. And please, next slide. Yes, and we start with the free presentation on policy. Then the topics on district heating and cooling and heat pump will be explained and clarified. And finally, presentation will be followed by question and answer session. We will be using Slido to facilitate our interactive question and answer session. To send your question, please link to Slido event by QR code you can see right now on the slide, or go to www.slido.com and enter event code. It's also written there. You have hashtag EULive24. If you write questions, please select also session 8. And you can also vote for the questions already submitted to show your interest and prioritize questions. Let's start with the first point of the meeting. I am very pleased to welcome my colleagues from DGNR who are going to present the main policy drivers related firstly to district heating and cooling, and then to heat pumps regulations. Madis and Matthew, it's time to start with your presentation. You have the floor.
Thank you, Piotr, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Madis Laaniste, and together with my colleague Mathieu, I'm happy to present shortly the policy background to this topic of district heating and cooling under this live CET Call. And the topic on heating and cooling builds up on our political aims and recent initiatives taken by the Commission in the field. So next slide, please. Next slide. One more. The next slide. And I would highlight 3 policy drivers relevant for district heating. First of all, the development in district heating sector is affected by our climate and energy goals for 2030 and beyond. To reduce greenhouse gas emissions in district heating, we need to decrease the use of fossil fuels and increase the deployment of renewables in district heating. And although the share of renewable energy share in district heating is a little bit above 40%, the majority of the heat supply is still based on the fossil fuels. District heating can provide a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions with attractive marginal costs, and therefore it's an area that needs promotion under the EU policies. Secondly, what's important to remind is that district heating facilitates relatively swift changes in the energy supply mix and helps to achieve our goals under the Repower EU initiative that aims at significant reduction of natural gas imports from Russia. And thirdly, what I would highlight on district heating is that district heating can contribute to increased energy system efficiency by integrating excess heat flows from industry and other sectors and intermittent renewables from the power sector. Energy system integration is essential to achieve next level efficiency in energy supply. And to operationalize these political ambitions on the ground, the recent revision of the directives addressed also the district heating and cooling sector. Next slide, please. So the Energy Efficiency Directive sets the obligations for the heating and cooling assessment and planning. member states are asked to perform assessment of their heating and cooling with a view to find out the best ways to increase renewable energy consumption and deployment of efficient district heating and cooling and high efficiency cogeneration. And there is also a new requirement arising from the last revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive, and it concerns the local heating and cooling plans and obligations of the municipalities that have the total population above 45,000. So in total, there are roughly 1,300 such municipalities across the Europe that they need to design such plans, and it covers approximately 1/3 of the EU's population, or the total population of these municipalities is approximately 1/3 of total EU population. So these plans are necessary to find out what are the most efficient heating and cooling development pathways to decarbonize the heating and cooling supply. And there is urgent need to promote this new requirement, and also to establish more concrete ways and instruments how to progress with these implementation in this area. So next slide, please. What is also essential is that the Energy Efficiency Directive is addressing heating and cooling supply, and particularly in the district heating and cooling systems. So there is a new definition of efficient district heating and cooling established in the directive, and this is foreseeing a gradual reduction of the use of fossil fuel in the district heating systems that want to be efficient ones, and there is a long-term development scenario put in place for the development of such systems. In order to make sure that we achieve the progress in the district heating and cooling systems, there is also a new requirement saying that there should be conversion plans for all the large district heating systems that have the heat and cold output more than 5 megawatts. And they should regularly update their plans how they are going to achieve the standard of efficient district heating and cooling. So this is a new requirement that needs technical backing from all sides to make sure that this new obligation is successfully implemented across the member states and all kinds of district heating and cooling systems. So that's all from my side. Next slide. Thanks.
And I'll take over from Madis. Hello, everyone. I will explain a bit the situation from the point of view of our regulations on renewable energy. In November last year, the new Renewable Energy Directive, so our legislative framework on the promotion of renewables, entered into force. There's a new overall renewable energy target in the directive of 42.5% renewable energy in the overall energy consumption in the EU, all sectors. So electricity, but also heating and cooling and transport. The previous target against which we were working until last November was 32%. So basically, we doubled our ambition for the current decade. So it's really a massive step up in ambition. And it means that we will need to really exploit all the available renewable potential in all sectors. Next to the overall target, we also introduced new increased sub-targets in various sectors, including one in heating and cooling, which has now become binding. So member states have to deliver year on year an increasing share of renewables in heating and cooling. There are other sub-targets that are also relevant for renewable energy in district heating and cooling, for renewable energy in buildings overall as well. The role of waste heat is also recognized to a higher extent. Next slide, please. Specifically, as regards district heating and cooling, as I mentioned, the directive now has an objective for all EU countries for the increase of the renewables share in district heating and cooling. Each year between 2021 and 2030, on average, that share should increase by a bit more than 2 percentage points in all member states. This is, of course, complementary with the pathway for the decarbonization of district heating systems that is in the EED. Another very important new requirement in the new Renewable Energy Directive aims to support the ability of district heating systems to provide flexibility services to the energy system as a whole. So there were already requirements for member states to ensure that district heating and cooling systems were taken into account, that the potential services were assessed, balancing services that they can provide when there is thermal storage, for instance. But the revision goes a step further, and now governments have to ensure that these potential services are actually taken into account in the grid planning by electricity system and operators, and in the infrastructure development, in investment decisions. So it's also a contribution to what Madis described as energy system integration, making sure that the energy system is dimensioned in the right way and that all efficiencies are considered. And another element is that member states have to also make sure that district heating and cooling systems can participate in electricity markets when they have such flexibility system services to provide, for instance, by displacing electricity consumption from one time of the day to the other. Next slide, please. There's a few other elements that have been introduced in the new legislation that is directly relevant for district heating and cooling. For instance, there are increased requirements for information on the systems about their energy performance, about the renewable energy share that they use in their energy consumption. Again, in combination with the EED, the new Renewable Energy Directive promotes the use of waste heat and cold, requires member states to coordinate really between district heating systems and potential sources of waste heat and cold. And this is written twice, so I already covered it. So with all these elements, we really have lots of necessary tools that are in place at EU level. And now the next challenge for us is to make sure that this is actually used and implemented at member state level, but also that we get lots of good practice, because some of these are very advanced, for instance, on the cooperation between district heating and electricity system operators. So exchange of good practice and of best examples is really a very important thing for us, and getting feedback on that is important for us. I will stop here, I think. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Matthew and Madis, for this policy update on energy system integration, as you also indicated, Matthew and Madis, at the beginning. Then about obligation to work on national energy and climate plans, local heating and cooling plans, also complex challenges, very relevant also for the first topic that will be presented later, especially I mean about the decarbonization of district heating and cooling, and also on heat pumps. And now Thank you very much. And now there is next presentation of this session will be given by Philip, who will introduce the heat pump issues. It's time for you, Philip. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Piotr. Good morning, good afternoon. So my name is Philippe Rivière, working at DGNR in Unit B3 on buildings and products. So in our scenarios for 2013, 2040, we see a strong development of heat pumps that is needed to reach our climate change objective, both in the individual sector, but also inside the district heating and cooling. So I will give you in the next slides, a presentation of the main policies that we see that are important for this deployment of heat pumps. So we will start with policies at product level, and then go with policies at building level. I will not come back on the policies that were already presented by my colleagues, but that are of course essential because heat pumps are mobilizing renewable energy and are also very efficient heating systems. And I will also give some more information on the framework of the electricity market and also on a recent support action on heat pumps. Next slide, please. So starting at product level, we have a very specific product legislation for heat pumps in Europe. We have minimum energy efficiency requirements for space heaters. So they are not only for heat pumps, but they are also for boilers and all those other type of space heaters. In that subject, I focus only on hydronic heat pumps, as hydronic systems are the most common type of heating system in the EU. And an energy label that is singular because it puts on a single label boilers and heat pumps. So we are revising presently this framework. In 2023, we have proposed a project to phase out at EU level standalone boilers via this set of regulation. But it's very unlikely to happen at EU level after the discussion, and probably it will be done through the Energy Performance of Building Directive at national level, so I will discuss that later. The main change coming at product levels regards the energy label, with rescaling to make it clearer that presently boilers are with a label on an 8+ to D scale, and they will be derated to F or G depending on their efficiency, which will make clear to the end user that they are inefficient, while heat pumps will be in A, B, C classes in the coming label. Next slide, please. So most of the efforts probably will have to be made by member states, and for that we gave them extra power on the revision on the Energy Performance of Building Directive. So we have cleared the legal basis for the member states to set minimum requirements, allowing them to plan the phasing out of fossil fuel appliances, in particular boilers. There will be no more financial incentives for the standard boilers starting 1st January 2025. And member states are to set a plan and policies in view to complete a full phase out of fossil fuels by 2040 in the built environment. And they also have obligation in terms of new buildings with the obligation to have zero emission buildings with no on-site emissions after some dates. Next slide, please. So regarding the electricity market, it's of course also very important to make sure that it's possible to develop heat pumps to draw electricity to these heat pumps in an efficient manner, but also in an economical manner. So the electricity framework in place is described here. I also describe the recent reform of the electricity market design. So normally the present status quo is that everyone has the right to have a smart meter to measure its own consumption, and member states should also ensure the availability of dynamic price contracts. And in the recent reform of the electricity market design, it should become available the possibility to have multiple supply contracts for a single collection point, which could allow to have a specific tariff, for instance, for off-peak electricity for heat pumps. The present framework also incentivizes the development of flexibility by operators. And there is now also the possibility to introduce flexibility specifically for non-fossil means. And also the last point is that there is also plans for the DSO. They have to adopt and submit network development plans, including to supply for the deployment of new technologies as heat pumps or electric vehicles. Next slide, please. So a last point on the policy side of heat pumps is that in 2023 we have worked on a heat pump plan. And the first part of this plan has come to light in a support project that is called the Heat Pump Accelerator Platform that will start this year. And whose objective is to monitor what happens at EU member states regarding the deployment and the potential barriers to the deployment of heat pumps. And so during a few years, there will be a platform set up that will allow all us interested stakeholders to work on these barriers and to follow the deployment of heat pumps, and also to communicate together and to communicate on the research and investigation needs and the market uptake of heat pump in the different sector. Yeah. So thank you for that. Thank you. So next slide. Thank you for the time. Yeah, if you have questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Phil, for sharing these policy objectives and interesting information on labeling. And then you also mentioned minimum efficiency requirements for the space heater. We're also talking about a new approach to standalone boilers on fossil fuels, with the intention not to have any incentives anymore. And also you plan some actions on heat pumps, and heat pumps will be also mentioned and then better explained the topic that was already planned for 2024 by my colleague later on. Thanks again, colleagues, Madis, Matthew, and Philippe, for the introduction and presentation of the current work on policy. If you don't mind, I would like also ask you to stay with us till the end of this session, because the question and answer session is at the end. Then if we receive some questions from audience, you can also give your answer and better explain approach or next policy steps. We are talking about efficient district heating systems, energy system integration. Both Madis and Matthew mentioned about this, and renewable energy sources. And exactly those aspects are very relevant for the topic that I intend to focus on. And we can start right now the second part of the meeting and talk about topics. And as you can see, the first topic is on district heating and cooling, supporting district heating and cooling. And the aim of the presentation is to explain you better the main points of the topic and give you some additional remarks that can help also to prepare the proposal later on and reach the success and receive money from European Union. I hope that all this information will be useful and will help you also to develop a very good proposal. Next slide, please. I divided my presentation into a few parts. Firstly, I would like to mention the topic objectives. Then I'm going to deal with the topic scopes. And after that, I will present expected impacts. And finally, there will be a session dedicated for questions. And please use Slido if you note also the code hashtag, and then you can also log in even right now in the web and put your question there. Please, next slide. Yes, the first point is I would like to talk about objectives. Then still, it's very often fossil fuels are the main source of the energy in district heating and cooling systems. And probably I don't need to convince you that renewable heating and cooling systems should be rolled out faster if we really want to reach decarbonization targets. District heating has been identified as a key option for the decarbonization of the heating sector. So, as you could hear, district heating and cooling operators, owners need to prepare also investment plans, implement plans, so that existing system can fulfill the criteria for efficient district heating and cooling. And next slide, please. Some work was already done in the previous years. For instance, guidance, recommendations, and technical advisory services have already been developed and tested at national and local levels. It was noted that the application of low temperature renewable energy sources for heating and cooling and the development of new low temperature systems are limited by different factors. Mostly human, technical, and financial capacities are low, and district heating operators or owners cannot find resources to follow the action. Then this is why technical support are needed to help district heating and cooling networks sector, the whole sector, prepare modernization and development projects. And exactly our intention is to help cities overcome some of the barriers in district heating and cooling sectors and reach targets described in the directives and presented by my colleagues. Next slide, please. Now I would like to talk about scope. Then, in order to reach the objectives, it's necessary to support the further application of efficient and renewable technologies. So the proposal are expected to focus on one of the two areas. The first area is existing district heating systems, and the proposal should provide them, I mean operators or the owner, with the required technical support for the preparation of investment plans for the fuel switch to fulfill the criteria for efficient district heating and cooling as defined in the Energy Efficiency Directive. Still, I'm talking here about exactly this phrase, efficient district heating and cooling, because this is very important for us. Later on, I also explain this better. And the second area is related to the development of investment plans for new district heating or cooling networks, provided that they are fully based on a low temperature renewable energy or waste heat, with particular attention to existing building. Next slide, please. Further requirements, the focus should be on the integration of low temperature renewable energy of waste heat. The investment plans to be produced should enable the targeted district heating system to fulfill the criteria for efficient district heating and cooling as specified in Energy Efficiency Directive, but not within the duration of the project, but within a time of 10 years. And of course, this activity should include technical part and detailed information of the investments, financial planning and pre-feasibility studies, timing, internal and external resources required, indication of public and private funding sources. These are elements that we will be searching in your application, in your proposal during the evaluation. Next slide, please. Also, additionally, activities should support the development of a substantial number of investment plans in at least 3 eligible countries, demonstrate the commitment of operators or owners of the district heating networks that will be targeted for the collaboration, engage and involve required stakeholders, in particular potential waste heat suppliers, work closely with the potential customers, and other activities depends on your area of interest. And also promote replication through other district heating operators owners. Please, next slide. The proposed actions are not expected to finance the development of the new tools, for instance, softwares, platforms, and so on. This activity was already done a few years ago through different projects. Then this is not the main issue that should be developed within this topic. And proposal must be submitted by at least 3 applicants from 3 different eligible countries. The Commission considers that the proposal will request a contribution up to 1.75 million. However, this does not exclude submission and selection of the proposal requesting other amounts. Everything depends also on your planning or your proposal, working area, exactly what is also written in your proposal with details. Everything later on will be also evaluated by experts. And it's also possible if you request, for instance, 2 million or 1.5 million, doesn't mean that this proposal is automatically rejected. Next slide, please. Yes, let's move to the impacts. And impacts are linked to the topic objectives and scopes. And we have here some positions, for instance. You can see number of investment plans allowing existing district heating systems to fulfill the criteria of efficient district heating and cooling, defined again in the Energy Efficiency Directive. Number of follower cases selected during the project life for which transfer of knowledge was effectively provided. Number of local and regional authorities integrating the outcomes of the project in their energy planning. Investments in energy efficiency and renewable energy sources triggered by the implementation of the investment plans developed thanks to the project. These are the main impacts of the project. Please, next slide. Yes, additionally, proposals should also propose other indicators which are specific to the planned activities. Proposals are not expected to address, of course, all the listed impacts and indicators, but you should also explain in your proposal what is the most important for you and focus your action towards this direction. And the results and impacts should be quantified, I mean also very well explained for the end of the project and for 5 years after the end of the project. Next slide, please. And more general impacts required by Life Clean Energy Transition Program. There are common impacts for all, let's say, topics here. Primary energy savings triggered by the project in gigawatt hours per year. Final energy savings also triggered by the project. Renewable energy generation triggered by the project. Reduction in greenhouse gases emissions. here in ton of CO2 equivalent per year, and investments in sustainable energy. These impacts are common, then please also take into consideration that you also should also mention values of these impacts in your proposal. Next slide, please. Yes, a few additional information. The whole topic description is available on the Funding and Tender portal. Link is given here, but you can also search it. To do so, you should go under Program for the Environment and Climate Action, LIFE, then find calls for the proposal and tenders, and select topic. If you do this, you have the whole text of the topic description, and additionally, you can also find all documents and other useful information, guidance, templates, for instance, annotated grant agreement, other documents that can also help you to prepare proposal and reflect to the text that was also published on this site. If you have questions related to the topic, you can also send email. There was also shown the address, CINEA live set EC Europa EU. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, there will be also, as I said at the beginning, the common question, session question. Please use Slido, and we will take them after the second presentation that will be right now. And my colleague Luca will present the topic on heat pumps. Luca, if you don't mind, the floor is yours.
I don't mind. Thank you, Piotr, and good afternoon, everyone. No my name is Luca Angelino, and this presentation has been prepared together with my colleague Stamatis Sivitos. I will be presenting the topic on heat pumps, and this topic has two separate scopes. For the next slide, please. As you can see depicted on this slide, the first is really addressing buildings, and the second is covering the industrial sector. Let me just highlight a few points already at this stage. The proposals should address one of these two scopes, so they cannot address both at the same time. They must be submitted by at least 3 applicants. This means beneficiaries, not affiliated entities, from 3 eligible countries. And for those, I encourage you to check the call document and related information on our website. We believe the Commission considers that proposals for both topics around 1.75 million euros would be sufficient to address the topic objectives, and nevertheless, there is a possibility to propose a slightly different budget. One last point is, if you were familiar with this topic in the past, we also used to address another very important barrier for heat pump deployment, meaning the shortage of qualified professionals in the sector in several markets. This has not been covered this year under the heat pumps topic, but rather under the build skills topic. So I encourage you to take a look at that topic, and you will see that upskilling and reskilling interventions for heat pump professionals are still available under Live CET this year. The next slide, please. So we start off by giving a little bit more details about scope A, which I mentioned is addressing buildings, and really for the next slide, requires applicants to develop, demonstrate, upscale, and or replicate what alternative business or heat delivery models. The very objective being to stimulate demand in existing buildings. This is a segment which is very challenging rather than new buildings. As we have seen, we have regulation really pushing heat pump and other low carbon technologies in new buildings. The main challenge still lies in existing buildings. So here we are addressing another key barrier for the deployment of heat pumps, meaning higher upfront costs as compared to mainstream boilers, for example, or other heating technologies. And the idea would be to test, develop alternatives, alternative business models to address this barrier. The key expected impacts already at this stage, let me stress that we expect a number of new installations triggered meaning that are triggered by the project, not necessarily installed by the end of the action. And we will see under expected impacts that commitment, for example, by possible future users is a good way to demonstrate that the new installations are indeed being triggered. Improved knowledge by key stakeholders in the sector, and new customers benefiting from alternative models, for example. So on the next slide, we have a number of requirements. I already mentioned that there is a need to develop alternative models in existing buildings. We expect as a minimum those heat pumps to cover space heating. That doesn't necessarily mean that we cannot cover, in addition, domestic hot water, for example, or water heating in general, and cooling, for example, via reversible heat pumps. We are not prescriptive when it comes to the building segment, so applicants can cover all possible buildings. However, we really encourage to address multi-apartment buildings and commercial buildings. These are specifically, especially challenging segments that we again encourage applicants to address. We want applications to demonstrate that the approaches which are being proposed have the potential in those specific contexts and specific markets to be effective. That means those approaches must somehow have been already tested somewhere else, and they can be replicated in a specific context, also taking into consideration the specificities of those contexts. And we expect the targeted markets to be somehow explained, and the context where these new models are going to be tested and developed being really addressed in depth. We also expect those models to take into consideration the requirement of ensuring high quality of the installations. So, for example, the selected buildings need to be suitable and ready for heat pumps, and that there is no oversize. So the heating needs should be calculated and taken into consideration properly during the preparation phase. So the next slide, please. We have further requirements that we really would like to stress on this occasion. Again, to ensure quality of the installation, we want that the installers and the professionals involved in the process are highly qualified professionals. So this needs to be demonstrated already at the proposal stage, that the applicants take into consideration all the stakeholders which are required to implement the action. So the value chain should be covered, and if it's not directly involved, for example, as part of the consortia, their interest or commitment in being part of the process must be properly demonstrated already at the proposal stage. We are aware of a number of partnerships already existing at different levels, European, national, local levels. So this could be good starting points, although not necessarily requirements. And again, we don't want to start from reinvent the wheel, because there have been already a number of actions. We have funded under Horizon 2020 or under LIFE, and we are aware of other initiatives, for example, funded under the Interreg or other programs. So please build on what is already available and trying to move forward from there. So again, this needs to be properly demonstrated at the proposal level. So then with the next slide, we move on to scope B, which is this time addressing industry and the industrial sector. And the objective, the next slide, please. The objective being really to facilitate, establish concrete collaboration between industry, so users on the one side, and providers, manufacturers of industrial heat pumps on the other side. The objective, the very objective, is to move from a tailored approach to a custom-built project by project approach for each individual project or plant or process heat, to a more streamlined and standardized approach with turnkey solutions for specific industrial sectors which have similar energy needs and have similar heat processes used. So with the next slide, we give examples of what this is expected, for example, from the user side, which is, for instance, specific industrial sectors to survey their processes and define a sort of an average process, which can facilitate a little bit this process, and to assess how this can be made more cost effective together with technology providers. And again, the providers, so the manufacturers of industrial heat pumps, to work on solutions, standardized solutions to integrate heat pumps in existing plants, industrial plants, and optimize their design. It's important to underline that we want to work on existing technologies, so technologies which are already available on the market. So we're not necessarily we're not funding technology development at this stage. So activities should cover and include also the creation and development and the exchange of knowledge of key actors involved, so supporting their upskilling in that sense, and also test, validate, and develop business models for the proposed solutions. So the next slide, please. Further requirements also concerning this specific topic include the need to ensure dissemination and replication of these proposed approaches, for example, by having advisory services or building capacity or capacity building activities embedded in the action, identify and map possible synergies with relevant funding instruments, so to ensure sustainability after the end of the action of the proposed approaches, and also to, as I mentioned, to help roll out technologies which are somehow already available on the market, rather than developing new technology. The next slide, please. We have expected impacts which are common for both scopes. So these are listed on the next slide and include number of installations of heat pumps triggered by the action. I mentioned earlier that we don't expect installations to be all the installations from the action to be finalized by the end of that action, but rather triggered, and the triggering can be demonstrated, for example, through proof, evidence, and commitments from users. The number of stakeholders with strengthened capacity and knowledge. Number of new customers which are committed to either embracing new business models, new technologies, so to install heat pumps following scope A, or to embrace new processes and switching technology when it comes to scope B. Again, specifically for scope B, the number of standardized solutions to implement heat pumps in industrial processes, and common for both, considering also the context, the current geopolitical context, and the objectives of Repower EU. We also want a specific quantification of the natural gas reduced triggered directly by the projects. Then on top of those, we have our common life clean energy transitions program indicators, and these include investments in sustainable energy, again triggered by the project, energy savings this time, renewable energy generation, and the related reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So these are top program-specific indicators, whereas the first are topic-specific indicators, which are extremely important to develop and address properly in your proposal. So with the next slide, I thank you very much for your attention. For those watching the recordings, I encourage you also to check the the funding and tender portal, so to check the frequently asked questions. We're going to publish, for transparency, all the questions received today, but also in the coming days, via the email address which was shared by my colleague Piotr earlier. We're going to share all the questions and respective answers on this portal, which are available, which will be available also from our website. So that being said, I thank you for your attention again, and good luck with your proposals.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you for your presentation also. Just to summarize, the topic is on the development of the heat pumps. We have here two scopes, and the proposal should focus or address only one of them. One scope is on the business and delivery models to stimulate large-scale demand for the heat pumps in the buildings. And the second is on work on collaboration between industrial heat pumps manufacturers and heat pump providers. If this is short, I can also summarize in this way. And the first topic about district heating and cooling, the key words I can say, this is the investment plans, low temperature district heating, low temperature sources and waste heat. And the proposal should focus on existing district heating and cooling networks, or work with the new district heating and cooling plants, let's say, because to develop networks. This is shortly two topics, the difference between them and the main objective. Okay, if we can have right now questions, for instance, from Slido, please. Look again. Yes, we have some of them. One, okay. The first question is, will the Commission prepare standard templates for the local heating and cooling plants? What do you mean by standard templates here? Maybe I can also ask my colleagues, because probably they are still with us.
Piotr, I can take this question.
Yes.
Well, yeah. What is short and simple answer is that we are not going to prepare standard templates for these purposes. So there is a template for comprehensive heating and cooling assessments to be presented on a national level, but we are not going to establish any recommended template for the local heating and cooling plants. So it's the task of the member states. So where the member states can build and design this template based on their own needs.
Okay, thank you very much, Madis. It means that there are no standard templates prepared by the Commission. This is the task for national authorities to prepare and work on this. The second question for the heat pump topic, scope A, can you please clarify the following? Proposals should demonstrate the effectiveness and the replicability of the proposed approaches. Thank you. Luca, then.
I can take this. Thanks.
Yes,
I already anticipated something in my presentation. So the idea here, at least when it comes to effectiveness, is a little bit twofold. Applicants should demonstrate that the approach, for example, has worked in certain contexts, or it has the potential to work in general if it's a totally new business model or concept. And it is replicable in the sense that applications must demonstrate a very good knowledge of the target markets and explain how they think the development and the rollout of those specific alternative models really can change things on the ground. They should explain very clearly the state of play in those target markets and ensure, demonstrate that the added value of the proposed action, for example, that this is innovative and it has not been already developed by other economic operators in, again, those target markets. So it's very important to develop and elaborate on the target markets, on the specific barriers those markets face, and how the proposed approaches have the potential, again, to be effective on the ground therein.
Okay, thank you very much, Luca. The answer, I think it's clear. The next question also, Luca, for you, for the heat pump topic.
Yes.
Are infrastructure and equipment cost eligible? Yes,
that's an important one, and I would refer again applicants to our frequently asked questions, which are going to be published. And I think this is going to be valid across the board for the whole life clean energy transition program. But I can anticipate that in general, we tend not to make infrastructure costs eligible. We often say that we fund the brain and not the bricks. That means equipment costs may be eligible only for a limited quantity and only if it's really essential to achieve the objectives of the proposal, for example, monitoring or testing, but they should be very much limited and very well justified.
Thank you very much. Next question and the second one are about conversion plans. The first is, are the conversion plans developed by the DH companies? And the second, do DH conversion plans have to be incorporated into local heating and cooling plans? Well, regarding the topic description, the proposal should focus on investment plans and try to incorporate add heat from low temperature sources or waste heat. As a result, of course, you can work also with local heating and cooling plans and propose some solution for your cities and different also organization. As such, it's not obligatory, for instance, for district heating and cooling companies to prepare these conversion plans, because exactly this is your topic that should help them also to work towards this plan. I'm not sure it's clear or not. If my colleagues can also from DG Ener can supplement, add some comments, please do this.
Well, yeah, thanks, Piotr. So, yeah, and thanks for the question, Leonardo. Indeed, right question. So, yeah, what concerns these conversion plans, development of these plans is the obligation of the district heating system operator according to the Energy Efficiency Directive. But concerning the life set, the approach can be different. So, how this is organized within the project proposals. And the second question on the integration of the conversion plans into heating and cooling plans that the municipalities need to prepare. These heating and cooling plans cover a little bit wider area than only the district heating. So this information from the conversion plans is useful for the local heating and cooling plans, but it's not a single input that the plans should take into account. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Matis, for adding also your comments. Should district heating and cooling networks already be selected and described in the proposal? Yes, you should convince evaluators that the planned activities are based on solid foundations and not only assumptions. Then, for instance, if you have district heating and cooling organizations owners as a member of the consortium, or at least some, you can provide some letters of support, for sure it will be taken as advantages comparing to the proposal that are not having anything, and where also district heating and cooling companies are not even selected. Then if you have more information in the proposal, for sure, can also help to score this proposal better and give higher score. Next question, should investment plans be implemented before the end of the project? You should prepare investment plans before the end. It means to prepare investment plans. And district heating and cooling operators can already start during the life of the project to implement some actions. For instance, to prepare procuring the necessary engineering studies and works. However, investments are not expected to be implemented during the project. Simply, your project can take 3.5 years, and the whole project investment project for sure will take longer than the duration of the project. Next question, what is the link between these investment plans for district heating and cooling and the local heating and cooling plans? Yes, I will also ask Madis later on to complement. Investment plans are prepared for district heating and cooling companies. And these plans can be later on used to create local heating and cooling plans as a next step. Local heating and cooling plans can cover, for instance, the whole city. Investment plans can cover, let's say, part of the city. This is the difference that I can see this, but please, Madis, if you can add also some comments here, don't hesitate and take the floor.
Thanks, Piotr. I think you provided already the answer. So yeah, these investment plans or conversion plans are of the district heating and cooling system provided by the operator of the district heating and cooling system is an input to the local heating and cooling plans. So that's what we can say at the moment.
Thank you very much. And I don't see any other questions. Yes, before I close, I would like to inform you that there is also a poll available. Please participate and express your opinion. Go to Slido, and it takes few seconds, minutes, maybe 1 minute to answer the question. Thank you in advance for your feedback. And I think, thank you very much for participation in the session. It was a pleasure for me also to moderate and to have all of you. Thanks to colleagues who actively participated. Also to those in the back office, because still there are some colleagues that are working exactly in these questions and answers. And also for those who prepared the whole session, the whole event. This was the last session of the day. Then thank you very much. Good luck with your preparatory work. And I hope we can also meet during the gap phase, for instance, if you receive the good information from the Commission that your proposal was also selected. Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you.